Knowledge is power. Make an impact by learning more. Call us right now for more help at 866-945-8070. Long before the point where it tells us that it's live. Kind of
Watch what you say.
Exactly. Before I think I need to. All right. What are we doing this week? We're doing Google Docs. Drive, file, stream, managing your files, or something like that. Google Docs. Bear with me here. I'm just naming the stuff for the Facebook live feed. And go live. Almost there, almost ready. Close a few tabs here. It's still going live. I have a feeling it's already live.
It says it's live.
Yeah. And we're officially live. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's June 15th, 2018. Can you believe we're almost halfway through the year? It's crazy, right? Doesn't it seem like the year just started?
Seems like it.
It does to me. So, welcome everybody. Good morning. We have some new faces I haven't seen either in a while or before. And of course, we have lots of the usual old faces. Hi, Gina.
Good morning, Seth. Yes, I am an old face.
Well, that's a good thing where I come from.
Yeah, I'm learning to rock it.
All right. So I'm going to go into the live feed so I can post it into the Facebook group so people can just comment and participate from everywhere. So, Gina, looks like you joined us live as well. You watching us twice?
Yes, I have two computers.
Okay.
So I get to do both, you know. I mean, it helps. I do it live on my second computer because I really want to see the comments.
Right, right.
I don't see the comments if I'm all on one computer.
That's true. No, and we do get some great comments from our live Facebook viewers, so that's always good. So speaking of my trip to Vegas before we went live, the one really good thing about it and why I went actually was to meet with my friends at Voice America. And let me just finish this.
I have one question while you're doing that. How many accountants did you find gambling? Just because we had that conversation before.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about it. I didn't see anybody that I recognized, like at any of the slot machines or anything like that. But there were so many people at this conference that I don't know, you know, because it's just a lot of CPAs who don't come to our conferences that we all normally go to, you know, who are there really just to get their CPE credits. And, you know, so so for all I know, they could all have been gambling there, and I wouldn't have known the difference. But something tells me accountants are not gamblers. It just doesn't seem very.
Not sure I'd want to risk taking account and doing my taxes, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, accountants are known non-risk takers, which is why I would think that they're not really big into gambling. And most of the accountants that I know, and I know a lot, are not gamblers.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. I don't do it because I know I'm the kind of person who would get hooked on it immediately, and I'd lose all of my money, and then I'd start spending all my clients' money on it. Like Dennis said, that's not the person you want accounting, right, and having access to your money.
Right.
I just needed to borrow $100,000 because I was in Vegas. I'll replace it.
Yeah, think of it as a big retainer.
Yeah, exactly. You're covered for like 10 years. Okay, so anyway, I was there to meet or visit with my friend from Voice America. We're launching a podcast. We're officially launching. I'd done a few episodes of The Authentic Accountant, just kind of threw them up on the Nerd Enterprises website. You can find them there, but this is going to take on a whole new format. We're going to have guests. We're going to be interviewing people. I've got some really cool guests lined up. including Gene Marks and Chris Brogan. So, you know, I'm kind of shooting for the top here in terms of people who've been really successful in some area. And then we have a format that we're going to kind of walk them through to kind of get their story out of them in a way that I'm hoping will prove to be very inspiring for people. So that's the essence of the format. And that's why I went to Vegas, actually, mainly was to meet with those guys and just hang out with them and talk with them a little bit. And they were doing a live broadcast from the event. So I got to get a taste of what that looks like. Took a few pictures of their setup because they have really cool, of course, like audio equipment. And so anyway, I'm sure I'll write something about that eventually if I get to it soon. But so that's my story. That's I'm sticking to it. That's where I was this week. That's what I did. So, but like I said, the best part was the drive. I like it because it's peace and quiet for 4 hours straight. You know, a couple people called me. One personal friend that I suspect because she knew that I was taking a long drive, she knew I was free to talk. So one personal friend called me a couple of times on the way out there. You know, sort of taking advantage of the opportunity, I suppose you could say. But, anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? No, let's talk about Google Docs and Google Drive file stream. You know, I didn't check to see if anybody actually posted questions when you registered. So if you do have questions, just interrupt me. Make sure you're not muted because you're all kind of muted by default. So sometimes people start talking and then they think I'm being rude because I'm not responding, but it's because I can't hear you. So just make sure that you unmute, just move your mouse over the screen, look at the bottom left, and you'll see the controls for your audio and your video. Which of course reminds me, if you don't want to be seen, simply turn your camera off. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to choose to hide the non-video participants. So this way we don't see those blank boxes on the screen. So before I dive in, anybody have any questions, things you want to make sure? Oh, and thank you, Alexa. Alexa in the chat says congratulations on getting those big names. Thank you very much. I worked hard for that. Checking the live Facebook feed, Kevin Lacey says he loves that I'm doing a podcast. Oh, and I should mention, it's definitely worth mentioning, that I have my first official sponsor for the podcast, which is Intuit, of course. Intuit has been a very, very good friend to me as a company. And I, of course, love their products. I live in their products all day, every day. I exclusively use QuickBooks Online with my consulting clients. And so I can't thank Intuit enough for putting their confidence in me before we have a single listener, right? So, you know, that is very much appreciated. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning, Katrina. And Gina, I almost said good morning to you again. I forgot I'm reading down the list of people who are in the live Facebook feed. So
Well, you can say good morning to me more than once.
good morning, Gina. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so let's talk Google Drive file stream. I'm curious, just for those in the live video feed here with me, show of hands, how many people are using Google Drive file stream? And I mean the newer upgraded, like you responded and said, I'm going to upgrade, not the old Google Drive, but the newer Drive file stream. All right, so it looks like a few people have said it. I see some heads shaking no. So
what's the difference?
The main difference is previously it was a sync. Now it is, as the name suggests, it's a stream. It's a constant connection, right? So like Dropbox or Box.com or ShareFile, you can set up the sync, right? So that normally these files, you work in them locally and then you get out of them and it syncs up to the website. With this, it's a constant connection. So if you're using, it's in other words, you know how, remember Smart Vault used to have a way to map your location directly to the spot on the server? It's just like that now. Really what you're doing is you're working in a mapped location that is mapped directly to the Google Drive, the Google server, right? Real quick, let's talk security. If you go on to, if you do a Google search for Google or G Suite security, you'll find the pages they have, and there are many, and they have all the certifications. They have SOC 1, 2, and 3, which are the accounting certifications that we require. They have bank encryption. They are FINRA certified. You know, they have the FINRA certifications, which is for the Securities and Exchange Commission. You know, so it's good enough for people handling very sensitive financial information. They're HIPAA compliant. right? They're compliant for healthcare level information. And one of the main reasons that they're able to be that, where a lot of the file services that we use wouldn't necessarily be, is they have versioning, right? And that's one of the key elements that separates a lot of the HIPAA compliant people from the rest, is that you keep track of different versions of a file, so that if somebody did try and mess with information, you could backtrack it and see what it was at any given point in time. So extremely secure, contrary to what you might sometimes read in Facebook forums. I often cringe because I see people who, claim to provide IT services to accountants, and they're in Facebook saying Google's not secure, and I just think you can do your homework. You should.
What about that new European security that just went into effect?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
So I have another question, Seth. How do you know if you're using the live stream versus the old?
You'll know because you go through a process setting it up. It's not something you could stumble into by accident. And they sent out notifications. I don't know if it was maybe just to G Suite users like myself, where you have a paid account, as opposed to Gmail, which are free users. But at a certain point, they're going to force it on you if you don't do it sort of voluntarily.
Well, I mean, FileStream is just for the paid business accounts, right? And because they separated them, and Drive is still with the personal accounts.
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's the case. I believe FileStream is for paid, and then there's well, here, let me show you something. So if I go over here and this is another clue, I'm going to share my screen before I start diving in, and somebody has to remind me that I'm not sharing my screen. So here's a folder with some video files for my 97 and up stuff. I was just cutting up a video this morning that I'm going to upload, as soon as we're done today. Once you install FileStream, which I believe Jesse's correct, means you have to have a paid account with Google for that. You'll have a separate drive just for this, right? And if I go into here, there's MyDrive and Team Drives. And in fact, in our 97 Up group, we just recently learned, because we were exploring this, the Team Drives is a feature I have like a basic pro plan with Google. I would have to upgrade to the next level to get the Team Drives. Team Drives are kind of what the name suggests. I can set up teams and put them in a particular folder or set of folders so that they can work on a project together. So it's just, they're really addressing the business needs, which is probably why it's something that's only available for paid accounts, which are, people who are using it for business, I'm sure from their view, are hopefully going to be using a paid account with them.
So for example, I pay $10 a month for like a terabyte of storage. That's not a paid account.
No, because you're just paying for storage that way. Okay. In fact, to tell you the truth, for that amount of money, you could just get an actual G Suite account. Well, it would be more than $10 a month. The base plan is like
$10 a month.
It's $10 a month per user.
A month, unlimited per user.
Okay, I thought it was more like 35. No, I'm sorry. No, you're right. I'm paying 35 because I have like 2.5 users, and it sounds funny, the half user thing, but they do prorate your billing based on usage. So even if you have users, if they're not using it, you don't pay for them.
So in theory, I could switch then.
Seth, how do I go? What's the process of going from just a free G Suite to paid one and get this Google Drive FileStream?
It's really just a simple matter of going to G Suite and setting up an account. So if you go onto Google and type G Suite.
Okay.
Now, the other part of it that's, I think, important, so here it is gsuite.google.com. The other thing is what this allows you to do, which is what originally sort of prompted me to do it actually, is my nerdenterprises.com domain, I'm able to bring into Google's world. So when I send emails from Seth@nerdenterprises.com, I'm using the Gmail client. I'm sending it out of the Gmail client. So in other words, you're able to bring your own domain into the Google universe, so to speak, so that you can manage everything. Because it's funny, I got an email a couple months ago, a reply to one of the weekly emails that I send out from a guy who's clearly a big Microsoft fan, and kind of blasting me or attempting to blast me on all this stuff that Microsoft has that Google doesn't. And I went point by point back and showed him where Google addresses the stuff, and in some cases even better. Case in point, how many people have ever tried to add a new user to an Exchange server? Right? Pretty much if you've ever experienced this process, the minute you know you have to do it, you know it's time to call the IT guy. You're going to get a bill for at least a couple $100 because it's never easy to set up a user on an Exchange server. And the IT guy who loves Exchange and Microsoft is going to tell you it's because of all the security. But I just got through explaining how secure Google is. And with G Suite, if I want to add a new user, it's as simple as, hey, Greg, give me your email address so I can email you an invite to become a user in my Nerd Enterprises G Suite domain. And I send an email to him, and he clicks on it, and he sets up his email address. And as quickly as he can choose what he wants his email address to be and create a password, he's in and he's got an account.
Okay. Recently I purchased Office 365 for personal, and I was torn between using that and Google Drive. I prefer to have G Suite because I'm using Gmail and I have all my email with G Suite still. I was concerned about the security, but you already touched on that. So I guess you answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Don't believe what you read on the internet.
No.
All right. No, I did my own homework, and I even have a course on my site on all these different file services, Google Drive being one of them. And it's the same series of lessons. I went through Google Drive, I went through ShareFile, Box, and I think I may have done Dropbox or something else. I can't remember now. But in each one of the first lesson was about the security, and I walked through and showed people where exactly to go on the web to find, the page that shows you all their security certifications.
Where is that at?
Can
it's
you
in my
share
courses.
that link?
Sure. If I go to,
Please.
you do have to be a paid subscriber to access the course, but I'll show you where it is.
No, just this.
Oh, the link for the Google
security.
security page. Sure.
Yeah.
So if I go over to, I actually have it linked from the course, so that's where I go. If I go to my subscription-based training page, and you're going to see where it's beneficial, I think, to, here it is, it's called File Management Applications is the course, where it's beneficial to, if you're going to do this, you kind of want to go all in with Google's products, because then everything works together beautifully and seamlessly. And all I have to do is log into my Google account, and I have everything at my fingertips, including and especially on my mobile device, right? So let me find.
Yeah, so true.
So here's Google Drive security. I think I made the security lessons on each of these actually free. All right, so here it is. So this was the link that I remember had all the badges. And it looks like they may have changed things around a bit. So let's go to the other one. Actually, here's an idea. And generally speaking, this is what you do. Just Google the application and the word security. And you'll find it. Boom, here it is. I don't even know what this one is, but here's your ISO, here's your HIPAA, here's your SOC, FedRAMP. So they have it all. So the link is, I'll put it in the chat for everyone. Right, and I'll put it in the live Facebook feed for those kids who are watching from home. Kelly Hollis on the live Facebook feed says she has received a notice for stream on a personal, but it's a paid account though. It's not a free account. She says on a personal paid account. So Dennis, that might be you. It might be because you're paying for the storage that you might be able to get access to this.
Okay.
All right, so there's the link to the security page. Now, talking about, what I just mentioned about going sort of all in with Google if you're going to use this, one of the keys, I think, right off the bat is using Chrome. Does everybody here use Chrome? Does anybody not use Chrome as their browser? I kind of flipped it on you. So everybody uses Chrome. Perfect, because when you use Chrome, there's a number of ways, because what happens is now we have sometimes multiple Google accounts that we manage, right? Because I might have a client who wants to give me an email with them. And, if they're using G Suite, again, very easy process. It takes less than 5 minutes to get me into their domain. And so I want to be able to manage that. And if I go onto any browser page, if I just open up a new tab, right, and I have my Momentum app, so that kind of overtakes it. But for those of you who end up right on the Google page, notice when I'm logged in, it shows me that I'm logged into my Google account right here. Excuse me. If you're not logged in, there'll be an option on your screen to log in from here. From here, I can actually add multiple accounts that I can toggle between, right? So here I have my main Nerd Enterprises. Here's my old free Gmail account that I had before I went to G Suite, and I still have some things in it, and my official YouTube channel is tied to this account, right? Because back when I set up Google Apps, was what it was called then, you know, now G Suite, there wasn't a way to move everything over. So I kind of got stuck with my YouTube channel being associated with this old Gmail account. Fine, no big deal. I just have to be logged into both accounts so I can easily access the right YouTube channel which is important to me because I make a lot of videos. And I can add more. You just click add more here. That's one piece. So when you're logged into Google, you can actually use this to toggle between different Google accounts, free or paid. You can list them all here. The other way is to actually create different Chrome sessions. So notice when I click up here, it says Nerd Enterprises. These are all other Google accounts that I have logins for, right? I have this is actually another free Gmail account that I created specifically to do videos. And it's just, so this is a free Gmail account. It's, hey, it's Seth David at gmail.com. And so you can see if I click over to that, it opens up a whole new browser session. And here I can go into my Gmail. I guess I need to sign in.
Is that the same thing as like creating different like Gmail accounts where you can access, you know, QuickBooks, you know, files in each one of them and everything?
Yes, because each of these is a completely unique browser session. So if you want to be in 2 different QuickBooks Online companies at one time, this is how you do it. You have to have a different Google account to be in 2 different sessions, right? Some people, and you can't do incognito. I've tried that, but incognito will overtake the browser session that you were using when you went to incognito. So you can't do it. You can't be in 2 companies that way. You would actually, so you can create some dummy Gmail account so that you can run multiple browser sessions, right? Just because you created a Gmail account doesn't mean you have to use the email part of it, right? It's just a way of getting into another browser session. Let me pull this off screen real quick.
So Seth, I use different browser sessions. Like one browser session is for me and all the things I do. Another browser session is called clients. And that's where I have all of my client Gmails like you do on the right-hand side.
Right. But you could still only be in one of those clients at one time, doing it that way. I'm pretty sure if you switch to another Gmail account, it's going to kick you out of that login. Maybe not.
Not
Okay.
anymore. Each tab is its own session now. They've changed that.
Okay, good.
That's
Good.
a recent change.
Right.
And they let you know each tab is its own session so that you can have different clients open one tab after another.
Right. So I can be in this tab in my old free Gmail account, and in this tab I can still be in my what do you call it? My Nerd Enterprises Google account.
But when I tried it, it kicked me out, like logged me out from the other ones.
Well, that's what Gina's saying is they've recently changed that so that it won't do that.
Oh,
It will let you run.
that would be nice.
Because see here, I'm in my Nerd Enterprises. Here, I'm actually in my old one, right? So yeah, it looks like it doesn't kick you out anymore. So in theory, now from here, I can go log into 2 different QBO companies. And are you sure that still works? Have you tried that? Because it's still the same browser session, so I'm not sure QuickBooks Online would go for that. Does it?
I haven't tried it with QuickBooks Online.
I thought you said you did it with your clients.
Different Gmail addresses. Like I have client addresses for
Oh yeah, no, that I know you can do. My question was whether you could be in 2 different QuickBooks Online companies this way. I don't think you could.
No, you can't. No.
Yeah. So if you want to be in 2 different client QuickBooks Online companies at one time, then you've got to do it this way. You've got to create a separate browser session, which again is very easy to do.
Incognito has always worked for me. I don't know why.
I went incognito. I tested it. I went incognito. I was in one QuickBooks Online company in my browser. I tried to go into a different one in incognito, and it signed me out of the first one. I don't.
Oh, you have 2 separate incognito sessions?
No. So in one, here in my browser, I'm in one company. Then I do a new incognito window, log into a different QBO company. It's still picked up as the same browser session. So
Not in
I
my
do
Mine doesn't do that.
for years now.
last time I tested it, which was a couple months ago, I'm pretty sure that's what happened, but I'll take your word for it for now and I'll test it again. But the last time I tried that, it wasn't working. So what I do is I create the different browser sessions for each different Google account. And another one I have, which is another paid one, is this one here called Seth David, which is my Seth at SethDavid.com. So this is a separate paid Google account that I use. And I use it obviously more for personal stuff than I do for business. And what I want to really get into, what sort of inspired this whole session today, is when we get into the file sharing part of it, because this is where I've seen recently that there seems to be confusion about this very process, right? Oh, Jesse's asking in the chat, is an Exchange server one that is through Microsoft? Yeah, Exchange is Microsoft's product. So yeah, they're kind of one and the same. It's Microsoft Exchange server. It's how they host or enable you to host email and send and receive it and get it on your phone.
So can you manage an Exchange email through Gmail?
You can. I've done it. And it depends on who the IT guy is who's setting it up. Because in one case, I was able to set it up very seamlessly. In another case, I got into one of those situations where the IT guy was blaming it on Microsoft, Microsoft blaming it on the IT guy, and we couldn't get it to work. I'm sure it has to do with how they set up the actual Exchange server and the permissions that they create. So the answer is yes, but it depends on who set it up and how they set it up. Because in theory, you can go in, take this Gmail account that I'm logged into as an example. If I go into the settings, and I go to inbox, no, I'm sorry, it's accounts. Here's where I can add more email accounts. If the client has their email set up or the ability to give you what's called a POP3, which is where they can just give you mail server information and set you up with a login, then you can add POP3 accounts here. So right here under send mail as, you add another email address, and you'll, instead of letting it try and figure it out on its own, you uncheck this, I believe it is. I guess there's a point here where you get to tell it, don't try and figure it out. I want to enter all the server info. Since I don't actually have information to do it with, I'm not sure it'll let me go through. But when you go through this process, you'll need to enter incoming server information and outgoing server information. It's a port number for each, and then you'll have to indicate if it's, you know, the security level. If it's SSL security, then usually it's a different port. In other words, you'll need to make sure that whoever sets up the email provides you with all that information. But then right in here, you can easily add that account in. You'll add it as a send as, and obviously you'll add it as a, what do you call it, as a check mail. So check mail means I can receive email here for that email account, and send mail means I can send from that address. Sometimes you only need to be able to receive it, and because you can send it back from your own email. That depends on if you're doing this for a client. Some of them want it to be completely opaque. They don't want it to be apparent that you're not working for them, right? So you can, here in the accounts areas where you can add other accounts. And the Exchange server, I believe we had done right from here. And if you Google the instructions, it'll also walk you through how to set it up. Like I said, one client, I was able to set it up in seconds. The other one, never able to get it done. So let's talk about the file sharing part. I was mentioning, and I was starting to show you, here I have Google Drive file stream on my computer, right? And here's my MyDrive folder. So in here I have, you know, this is where I start managing all of my files, right? And this is just my little workflow. Every year I create a new folder and I move things into that folder based on what's still sort of active. And this stuff that's still in 2017 eventually will get archived onto like a permanent storage for things that I don't need anymore, but I'm not going to delete. I want to archive it. That's just my own workflow. But basically, like any other file sharing service, I can go in here and create all the folders I want and organize things, right? And these are synced. So if I go over to here, and let's just go into a blank Google page so I can access Google Drive. When you click this little icon, it gets you the list of apps. Of course, you want to be logged in when you do this, and that's where you can quickly browse to Drive, which is, again, Drive file stream, same thing. Now, you'll notice here that I'm in my MyDrive section, and notice it's all the same folders down here at the bottom, right? So this is an exact mirror of what's here locally, right? They mirror each other, and like I was saying in answer to Dennis' question earlier, the difference now versus the old version is this is no longer a sync, it's mapped right to the location on the web, right? It just makes it a little more seamless. And you know, still, if I put an Excel file in here and start working on it, of course it's going to be locked, but then as soon as I release it, there's no sync. It's pretty much instantly updated for the next person who may want to access and use it, right? So again,
I have a question, Seth. Since it's mapped to Drive, what happens if the internet goes out? Do you have access to your files or not?
yeah, then and the next time you regain access, it will, you know, it will link up and you know.
Yeah, but I'm saying, do you have access? Can you open an Excel file saved there?
Yeah, because you're mapped to the location. You can access the files right there. If your internet goes down, you'll just be working offline, and once you go back online, it'll sort of sync up. I hesitate to use the word sync because, again, it's not really a sync anymore, but for lack of a better word. And
so, Seth, does it mean that like it's actually save it locally and on cloud, or how is it? Like, kind of.
In a manner of speaking, yes. In the sense that you can access it locally, it's, you know, the terminology is not exactly correct to say it that way, but for all intents and purposes, yes, you have access to it locally. If I turned off my internet, I could still work in these files.
Okay.
I mean, the only time you don't have it locally, which has been an issue for me because I work out of 2 different file stream accounts, is when you're logged out of it or you're logged into a different one, then you do not locally have the other one.
Well, and the trick to that is if you work in more than one file stream account, is share one, you know, so you're logged in to one file stream account locally on your computer. So any other ones that you work in, you should share to this one. Right?
Oh, like I should share, like, so I contract out for one guy who's on his, I mean, I just use his file stream. So should I share his with mine or mine with his? Or?
Yeah, you just, whatever he's given you permission to, well, we're getting a little bit of ahead. So let me back up.
Sorry.
I'll come to the answer to your question because I want to kind of show this to you in sequence so it actually makes sense. Juliet's asking, did I say that Google Drive and Livestream is the same thing? So Google Drive is kind of the older product. The new product is Google Drive File Stream. And again, the difference is Google Drive, the old version, was just a sync, right? This is a stream. It's a constant connection because it's mapped to the location on Google's server.
Can I tell you one bit of advice? Because I have one file that I use desktop for. And it's a larger file. Housing it in a Google file stream just completely, you'd be doing 10, 15 minutes between transactions as long as it was sitting in the file stream. Once I pulled it out of the file stream and just housed it locally.
You're talking about a QuickBooks Desktop file?
Mm-hmm.
You never want to put a live desktop file in any file sharing service anyway. That's a big no-no, has been for years. You can corrupt the data file that way.
Unless you're using QBOX.
Yeah. And because QBOX isn't that. QBOX actually polices the data and makes sure that there's no, because when you're in a QuickBooks Desktop company, you have a lot of other processes that are trying to ping that file, and now you're adding to the mix the fact that your file sharing service is trying to ping it to see if it's ready to upload the latest updates to the file. So in the first place, you never want to do that anyway. QuickBooks Desktop files always need to be in a local folder. Can't be in Dropbox. Can't be in Google Drive. Can't even be in ShareFile. Box.com, because they kind of built it with QuickBooks in mind in part, will actually tell you, it'll give you an error and tell you you can't put this kind of file in a Box folder. So
Seth, I have a question. Can we share the, like at the end of fiscal year, I send the link of my QBD to my accountant. That one is still okay, right?
What do you mean when you say you send a link?
Like a backup, not a link.
A backup copy is fine. In fact,
sorry.
when I worked in Desktop and had my own company in Desktop, I was insane about this, because I kept my desktop copy local because I needed to for the reasons I was just explaining. But if I went in and so much as wrote one check, I would make a backup and put that in Dropbox. The backups you can put in these file sharing services because nothing else is trying to ping that file. It's the live QBW data file that's constantly being pinged for access from all these different processes. And again, when you add into the mix the process of a file sharing service like Google Drive or Dropbox or any of them, people have gotten badly corrupted data beyond the point of repair as a result of doing that. So.
The only way that I do know to share a QuickBooks Desktop, actually share it, would be QBOX.
Right. No, QBOX for sure. But QBOX is, again, QBOX is not one of these file sharing services.
For desktop to be shared.
Right. It's an application that will allow you to share it and sync it between locations, but it knows how to police that data transfer process so that nothing else can touch the file while someone's in it. It locks it out. So yeah, if you're insistent on staying with desktop products and you need to be able to share it, QBOX is the answer. I don't want to go too deep into that because it's a different topic for another day. But
Seth, a quick question. So if you have this file stream on your computer, is it taking up storage on your computer?
Yes, it is. So let's take a look. Let's answer your question specifically. So I'm going to go into 2018 here. Let's go into the cash flow show with Mike and Seth. And you can see I've got this large PDF, and it's showing me it's 34 megabytes, right? So yeah, again, the file is there residing on your computer, but it's just not synced. It's actually mapped to a location. But as soon as I map another server location onto my computer, it's going to use up space on my computer.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So let's talk about the sharing process. So here I am logged into my Nerd Enterprises Google account, right? And then over here in this browser session, I'm logged into my SethDavid.com Google account, right? 2 different Google accounts. So the first thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to share something with me, right? So let's go into my Nerd Enterprises Google account, and I want to start off with a simple like local office document. Let me get just any Excel file open. Right, just put any old thing in there. Let's save that as computer. I'll just put it on my desktop for a minute. We'll call it test G-drive files.xlsx right on my desktop. Let me open up a window to my desktop. And here's what I want to do. There's a couple ways to do this. So now let's answer Jesse's question real quick. I'm going to close this file. Let's say that I want this file sort of owned here by, let me do it the other way. I'm going to have it owned in the Nerd Enterprises Google Drive. So back here on MyDrive, and notice I'm on the web side because I'm in my browser. I'm going to create a new folder just to sort of test things out here. So test G drive folder, create. That shows up here. If I go back to my local folder, which is here, and go back to file stream, MyDrive. I think I did it here in 2018. Did I? No, directly in MyDrive. Okay, there it is. I don't know why it took a second. It should have been instant because there's nothing in it. So here's a test G drive folder. I'm going to copy this window out so I can move it and go to my desktop. I just want to drag that Excel file in real quick. So I'm dragging the Excel file. Now I'm putting it into the MyDrive environment. And as you can see from the icon, it's kind of syncing up. I can also see here in my icon tray that it's now syncing, right? And internet speed counts, by the way. So things will be a little slower because I'm streaming here with you all on Zoom and sharing my screen, but pretty fast, obviously, for a small file like this. And now if I go over to the website and I click into the folder, there it is. So let's say I want to share this whole folder with my SethDavid.com account, right? So, and Jesse, going back to your question, if in fact it had been that somebody had shared this folder with me, once I've been given permission by somebody to access this folder, I can go into this folder's sharing permissions and share it with anyone. So for example, when a client shares something with me, I create a folder for that client's stuff, and I share it with my, with my nerdenterprises.com domain. When I first set up my nerdenterprises.com domain and I had a whole bunch of stuff in my free Gmail account, what I did was I put all of the stuff that I cared about from that free Gmail account in one folder, like a root folder with lots of subfolders and other things, and I shared that root folder with my nerdenterprises.com domain. So that put that whole set of documents into my nerdenterprises.com domain. From there, I could do with it whatever I please. I could put the stuff anywhere. So that's the trick. If you have clients that share Google Docs with you, or share files that are in a Google Drive folder, just share that folder with your primary account, but create a folder in your primary account for that client so you can separate and distinguish what belongs to whom. Right? So for now, I'm going to take this whole folder and I'm going to share it with my SethDavid.com account. So Seth@SethDavid.com. When I'm sharing with an individual, it assumes I want to give that individual full permissions, right? So they have full access to do whatever. They can change the files, everything. If for some reason I don't want them to have that level of access, then I click here and I can, so either they have full access or they can view only. When you're sharing with an individual, you don't have a whole lot of choices in between. Right? But the assumption is, and generally speaking, I've experienced it to be the case, that if I'm sharing with an individual, it's because I want that individual to have full access to everything, right? There are other ways of sharing, which I'll show you when that's not the case. So as soon as I send this over, now let's go into my SethDavid.com account. And notice I purposely have different Chrome themes for these sessions, so visually it's very clear for me to know which sort of session I'm in. What that's going to do is it's going to show up here and shared with me. Right? See, it's right there, the test G drive folder. So to find something that somebody has shared with you, you'll get the email notification also, and you can click on the link and access it that way. But short of that, and if you can't find it, or for whatever reason you don't have that email notification, this is where you'll find it for sure. And it shows shared by Seth David. This is my other Seth David, my alter ego, right? Now, what I learned recently is that a lot of people are just managing what's been shared with them right here in the Shared With Me section. That's the mistake I wanted to address, because you can't organize anything here. It's not meant to be dealt with that way. This is just a log of everything that's ever been shared with you in chronological order, and it shows you who owns the thing that's been shared. What you'll want to do at this point, and again, Jesse, this goes back to what I was saying. So if at this point a client had shared something, then you share it into your primary account, it's going to show up here in the Shared With Me. What I want to do now is go into MyDrive. Okay, and I'm going to create a new folder called Stuff Seth Shared With Me. Actually, just to be clear which account we're talking about, we'll call it Stuff Nerd Shared With Me, because we have Nerd and Seth. So I create that folder. Notice it's here under MyDrive. If I go back now to Shared With Me, I can take this whole folder and drag it right over there. Right, so I go here, here's the test drive folder, and there's the Excel file right there. Now,
so by doing that, it doesn't do anything to the original files or anything on the client side.
Doesn't break a thing. And the beauty of this is the client can do whatever they want as far as how they want to organize the files. You can organize them however you want, and no sharing is going to get broken. And I'll sort of.
So Seth, if we make changes in that file, it's not going to make this, like, it's not going to affect the original one that the clients, right?
Exactly like I just said. Yeah. So it's all you're doing is creating a reference point through which you're going to access that very same file. So
No, sorry, that's not what I was asking. So say that I take that file and now I have to work on it. The work that I make on that file is not going back to the client. It's just going to stay in my computer.
no, it will absolutely. That's exactly the point I just made. This is still shared and synced, and so nothing's broken here. If you want to be able to make changes without the client being able to see those changes for some reason, then you have to pull the file out of here altogether.
Oh, okay, okay.
This is shared, and the point of this is that you wouldn't want to do that. You would want the change synced and available. That's the whole point. You're trying to share and collaborate with people on this stuff, right?
Okay.
That's why we do that.
So when I'm working on it, nobody else can work on it till I'm done? I mean, like 2 people cannot work on it on the same file. Is that
If it's
correct?
an Excel file, yes. But herein lies the beauty of Google Drive, because watch what I can do now. I'm going to right-click this, open with Google Sheets. And in a second, it'll convert it to a Google Sheet where you and I can both be in there editing things and making changes in real time. And we can see one another's changes exactly as they happen.
Wow.
So I do this all the time, with clients when I'm working on financial projections, forecasts, because this way I can have the client be in there updating their sales projections while I'm updating their payroll model or whatever it is, and this is the beauty of it, is that we can both be in there at the same time. We don't have to worry about emailing files back and forth. Now this file is no longer sort of linked to the Excel file. So if I convert it to Google Sheets and I make changes in the Excel file, that's going to have no impact on the Google Sheet file. I've converted into a new sort of, I've created a new file based on the Excel file that now, and the idea is now I want to use Google Sheets. I don't want to use Excel anymore because Excel doesn't have the kind of collaborative capabilities that Google Sheets offers.
But now you have to invite the client back to this one, right?
No, because the client is, remember, this folder is shared with the client. So if I go back to the nerd version of this folder, which is here, and I go in, notice I have access to this same Google Sheet.
Okay, so everything in that folder then is still shared.
Yeah, because the whole folder is shared. Now, you don't have to do it that way. You could not share a folder and just share individual files, right? So in this case, in the example I'm using, we decided to share the entire folder. So, and I can change that. So one thing I would recommend, especially if you're going to go this route and convert it, is what I'll usually do is I'll create another subfolder called archive, and I'll stick the Excel file in there so that it's clear we're no longer using that file, and that way, and of course I'll instruct the client that it's been converted to Google Sheets and we should only work in there from now on.
I have a question. So as default, you use Google Sheets as your spreadsheet as opposed to Excel?
I use Google. The only case where I'm not using Google Sheets recently is I have a client who has, funny enough, they have medical information. And even though Google is HIPAA compliant, they just don't trust anything. So they don't want me putting their stuff in a cloud sort of version. So they're kind of insisting that I stick with Excel. So fine, I'm not going to argue with them about it. And so we use Excel. And funny enough, but then now I have to email copies of the file to them. So email is probably a lot less secure than just putting it into Google Sheets. But again, I'm only going to try so hard to convince a client. After that, I'm not going to argue with them. I'll meet them on their playing field, so to speak, to a point, So that's the only time. But otherwise, yeah, I always go to Google Sheets these days. I do everything in Google Sheets because it does all the same stuff that Excel does. I've got the videos to prove that. And it has the real-time collaborative capabilities, which Microsoft has, but they don't work nearly as well. There's Microsoft SharePoint, doesn't work as well. And I've experienced a lot of friction with it, where I've had people try and share Office 365 documents with me, and I go to open them, and it tells me I need a paid account to access that document. Whereas with Google Sheets, I can share it with anyone. All you need is a free Gmail account so that you can be logged into a Google account, and I can share it with you. Very, very easy to do that way.
Well, it seems to me the only advantage that Google or Excel has now is like Power Pivot, where you can basically create effectively database tables, as opposed, that you can expand the size of Excel.
So Power Pivot is an external app that works with Excel, and Google Sheets has its own apps that work. You can go into, there's a whole app suite for Google where you can access different kinds of applications that work different add-ons, right? If I open this up now Excel or from my Nerd file, you'll see here, by the way, you'll see the two versions of me in the file once it finishes loading.
Have you played with that Skyvia app yet that links?
I haven't.
Oh.
I haven't. So notice there's two cell pointers. One is me as Nerd, which is blue. The other one is me as Seth David, which is green, right? I'm going to move my Seth David version over to my other screen so you can see the Nerd version of the file. And watch this. I'm going to be Seth David over here making changes. This is me as Seth David. So you can see that it's being edited because it grays it out. As soon as I hit enter, boom. It's that fast. So when I say real-time collaborative, I mean real-time collaborative. It's instant, right? And then there are.
Seth, I have a question. Do you have lessons like elaborated lessons on this Google Drive setup from beginning to the end? Like that goes beyond this webinar? That's
this course right here, which covers a bunch of different file management. The one I was referring to earlier with the security lesson.
Right.
This course, in fact, this course goes over QBOX, which Gina mentioned.
Okay.
And it goes into, let's see, it goes QBOX, box.com, then Google Drive, and then share file. Those are the
sorry, can you scroll up a bit to see the name of that?
So it's if you just go to my site, nerdenterprises.com, the course is called File Management Applications.
File Management, okay.
Yep, and it's under, so in the site, under services, it's in subscription-based training. So
yeah, I've seen it. I just didn't know the name. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So the key that I wanted to impress upon people is the ability to manage the files in any structure that you like without breaking the sharing aspect of it, right? You're not breaking the link between you and your client sharing this file when you create your own folders. And if I go back to the Seth David account and I go back to here and I go to shared with me, it's still here. The whole folder that got shared is still here, but I've also created another reference point here. This, under MyDrive, is where I want to organize and manage the files from, not here and shared with me. I was shocked recently to find out that people were managing this stuff from here, and it's not manageable, right? Because, again, there's no way to organize it. I mean, it's got great search.
It's still the same file and the same data, right?
It's exactly the same file and the same data. You could go in here, and I can open up the same file from here, but notice, the folder I can double-click and get access, and it takes me in, to the same exact place. Because these are just reference points, right?
I have a question. Is there like a ongoing list of all the changes been made, and where do you find it in the file?
Yep. So there's versioning, and I've shown you this before, Dennis. You know this, or are you asking for other people's sake?
Well, I have a bad memory.
Okay, no worries. So if I go to File, I can go to Version History.
Oh, okay.
And I can say See Version History. And this goes for any type of Google document, not just Google Sheets, right? If I go create a new Google Doc. And by the way, one of the other things I love about using the Google Docs environment and converting Office Docs to Google Docs format is each of these files in the Google Docs format, albeit long and ugly, has a unique URL that I can use to link to that document directly. And I use that a lot in my project management software, which is Active Collab. So I might create a task where central that task is working in some Google document, and I'll paste the link in the notes in the task directly to the Google document so that I can quickly reference it when I go into my project management app and start working on that, or I'm ready to work on that file. It's, it's in a click, I'm there. In fact, what I've begun to do, and I did an example of this in a video I did recently on Active Collab, is in every project that I create in Active Collab, I create a task list called reference. And then one of the tasks in there is called Google Drive folder. And inside of that is a link right to the folder, right? Because the folder itself also has its own unique URL. So that's one of the other things I love about working on the website of this kind of environment is that I can link to anything in here. And it just makes it easy for me to set up an ecosystem that's insanely efficient. Because now when I want to work on a client, I go to that client's project in Active Collab. From there, I have the bookmarks, the links to go click, boom, and I'm in and ready to work on whatever it is I need to work I wanted to also show you the other file sharing options, because so far I showed you sharing a folder and sharing it to an individual, where I showed you the permissions is somewhat limited, because the assumption is if I'm sharing with an individual, then in other words, I wouldn't be sharing it with an individual like that if I didn't mean for them to be able to have complete access. But let's say I wanted somebody to only be able to see this Google Sheet file and not actually make changes to it, right? So I'll go into the nerd side of it, because that's where it's owned from, so to speak. And you can do it from a few different places. So while I'm inside the sheet, I can click the share option, and it gives me the same exact dialog, right, where I can enter in the name. Notice here it says shared with one person. I can actually click on that, and it takes me into the sort of advanced dialog, where it shows me it's shared with Seth at Nerd Enterprises and Seth at Seth David. And of course, I can go and invite more people, right? Here's a link that I can send to people for it, but notice it lets me know it's only accessible by collaborators. In other words, right now, with the permissions being what they are, if I send this link to one of you, you're going to get redirected to a place where you can request access to the file, but it won't let you in unless I respond to that request and give you permission. So the other thing you can do is to share, and right here it says get shareable link. Now here's where you have really a lot of different options. Because we're accessing this within my paid Google account, again, my whole domain, nerdenterprises.com, is managed from within my Google account. So initially, here it says anyone at SethDavid.com with the link can view, right? Because SethDavid.com is the one who owns this. That's right, I did it that way. So if I do it from here, it's actually the same thing. It says anyone from SethDavid.com can view the link. If I click this drop down, there's a few simple options, right? Anyone at SethDavid.com with the link can edit, or one for comment only. But if I click more, now I can be much more detailed about the sharing permissions. I never use this option. And well, I take that back. The only time I use this option is if I truly have a document that I want to make available to the public on the web, and it actually becomes searchable if I choose this option. Normally, I might do anyone with the link, because I don't want to sit there adding individual people. So I can choose that anybody who has the link. Nobody's going to guess at these links. You can see how long they are, right? But I can choose anyone with the link, and then down here, what can that person with the link do? I could say they can only view or they can only comment. Or if I say can edit, that means they're getting full permissions, right? So a lot of times I'll use the can comment, because I don't want them to change anything. I don't want them to mess up my document, but I want them to be able to comment on things and give me their input or feedback on something. So I use this option a lot. Now, mind you, if I do this, that doesn't change the fact that anybody I've shared it with individually still has full rights, no matter what I did here, right? This is a separate permission that I'm setting. So this permission only applies to people who have the link, unless, of course, it's one of the people I happen to have shared it with, giving them full permissions, like here, right? So these people in the advanced dialog, I can still have control over what they can do separate and apart from the access configuration I've done with regard to the sharing link here. Everybody with me on that? So I can set up separate permissions. One set of permissions for just those who have the link, separate from, and if you click here on advanced, it takes you to the same place. So the link is one set of sharing permissions. When I've shared it with an individual, they have their own set of permissions based on what I've decided for that individual. Two separate things. Right, and in here, when you're inside any document, you have almost like you can insert a comment on whatever cell you're on. There is also, there used to be like a chat. There it is. I was wondering where that went. So here you can have a chat with other people who are in the document, right? So if you're actually working together with somebody on a Google Sheet, you can actually have a chat with them, again, live, real time. I tend to use Slack for this kind of stuff because most of my clients I have in Slack anyway. So if I'm working with a client, we'll probably use Slack for this part. But sometimes it's convenient to do this when you're both just working right in this file and you don't care about keeping a permanent archive of the conversation. It's just might be a quick thing like, hey, can you make this fix? Right? And then, of course, if I go back over to the other side of it, my nerd side, I see a notification here that there's a new chat. right? And if I go back, so again, this is a real-time live chat that I can have with collaborators on this stuff. So those are kind of the main things I want everybody to kind of take away from this is when somebody shares it with you, it goes into shared with me, but what you want to do is set up your folder structure in MyDrive where you're going to keep that stuff, right? Drag it in, and then you manage it from here. And the search works really well, like I was saying before. Oftentimes when I'm in MyDrive and I do a lot of one-on-one remote calls with clients and I need to get into that client's files quickly, I don't browse through the folder structure. Google is the king of search, and their search function works really well within their products too. So if I have a client that I know I want to pull up files for, I'll give you a quick example. If I do, this is one of my client companies' name. As soon as I type their name, because the name is kind of unique, it takes me right to a list of their stuff, and these are cash flow projections that I've done for them. Right, so in 2 seconds, I can click over and open this file. And once I'm there, and I'll use this one as the example now, if I want to get into the folder where this file is located really quickly, this is another thing I've noticed a lot of people I don't think have noticed. This little folder icon right here, when you move your mouse over, initially it looks like it's just to move the file around. But there's also this launcher, which when I click on it, will actually open up the Google Drive folder where it's located. So that's a way of getting into that file's home wherever I put it, not in shared with me, but in the actual folder. So notice it took me right into that test G Drive folder, right? So that's an easy way to get from a file that you're working in over to its location so that now if I want to access other files for the same client, boom, they're all right here. I haven't checked the live Facebook feed, and we're also just about out of time here. So let me go over and take a look at that. And if anybody has questions, now is a good time. Sarah Laidlaw says this is awesome when when we're chatting about budgets. Yep.
Yeah, I hated Google Drive, and now I'm like, this changes everything.
Right. No, it's so often the case that because I've had that same experience where I've hated a product, and then when I gave myself the chance to really learn how to use it, all of a sudden now I fall in love with the product because I understand how to use it, which means I see the possibility, so to speak, in terms of how it can change my whole workflow and can change your life.
Absolutely.
Sarah says, remember that Word, Excel, and Microsoft products, and they don't necessarily play well with Google products, hence the conversion to Google Sheet and Google Docs. Yeah, I mean, if you're just hosting a Word document or Excel document in Google Drive, it'll be fine. I've never had any issues doing that. But like I said earlier, I prefer to convert them over to Google Docs anyway because of all the advantages that offers, just in terms of the fact that I can easily link to the files and, again, the collaborative capabilities. Jeannie in the chat says, I have a question about naming files. I save to Drive. I get a lot of attachments, PDF via email that I need to save in Drive. 90% of those attachments are named Scan. Currently, I have to save the folder I want. Then I have to navigate back that folder, several folders deep to rename the file. Is there an easier way? So actually, I just showed you the answer to that question sort of inadvertently. So when you're in the file, first of all, when you're in the file, I can change the name right up here.
Share your screen.
Thank you, Greg. So I can rename the file just by clicking in here if I'm actually in the file. If it's something like a PDF, what I usually do, I save it to Drive so it goes right into your MyDrive folder, right? I save it there first, then I rename it, then I move it into its permanent home. That's kind of my workflow on something like that because it is easier. Also, if you do know that it's called Scan 001, again, use the search, right? And that's a much faster way. And look, I actually came up with a PDF that happens to be named that, right? So that's the other way. But normally what I do is, you can either use the search, which will get you there much faster. Make sure you're doing it on the website. Searching in Windows Explorer or Max Finder, not going to work as well. But if you search in the website of Google Drive, very, very easy to find something if you know exactly what it's called, as long as you don't have a million Scan 0001 documents, right? But the best way, I think, is to just save it to your MyDrive initially, because a lot of times I'm even doing this on my mobile, right? So I can save it to MyDrive on my mobile, then I can tap and hold to rename it, and then I can move it wherever I want. And moving it from the mobile is a pain in the neck. So usually I leave that stuff in my MyDrive folder until I get a chance to sit back at my computer and actually, move it to its permanent home. It's just easier that way. On the other side, if I am going to reorganize a file that I've got, it's actually probably easier to navigate that part of it from your local folders, right? So let's say now I want to move this test drive folder somewhere else, deeper in my file structure. Watch how I do this. So I'm going to create another copy of this window. And let's just dock them next to each other. One of the things I love about Windows Explorer that I can do this and put two things side by side like this. So I want to take this test drive folder. I want to move it somewhere else in the folder structure. So I've got two copies of the same window from Windows Explorer. I'll go into my 2018 folder, and let's just create a new folder called sublevel 1, because I'm going to delete this after. Right, let it create it. Of course, now Windows is not playing nice. All right, so sublevel 1, let's go in. I'll create a new folder, sublevel 2. So easier to manage file movement from the local side this way, because now what I can do is take this test G drive folder and just click and drag it over. And that will move it here, and within a matter of seconds, hopefully, it's already gone. No, there it is. It just moved it. So notice it's gone from this folder. I think there's a way to resize this section actually so that I don't have this big quick access thing in my way. But if I go to 2018, sublevel 1, sublevel 2, so moving it locally, updated it on the website very easily. But again, if I go to MyDrive and I want to find it, I can just start typing the word test because I know that's in the name, and it finds my folder that way. So click right in there again. So that's the other power of Google Drive that I think if you force yourself to learn to use the search and rely on the search more, you'll find that your workflows get much, much faster using Google Drive. You have to learn to sort of trust the search. So Jeannie, hopefully I did answer your question. Again, save it in your MyDrive folder first, then rename it. Move it locally if you can, because as I just demonstrated, it's a lot easier to move files around on the local side. I tested it to see if I could take two different windows of Google Drive and drag something. It doesn't work. Maybe they'll change that someday. But I did try that once, and it didn't work. I tried it recently, actually, where I would pull this window away and have the browsers in two different windows.
Window.
What?
Sharing. You're not sharing.
I did it again. So if I have these two Google Drive folders, right, and I try and pull one away so I can drag something from one location to another, it doesn't work. If I try to take that sublevel 1 folder and let's say go back over here to MyDrive, and let's say I want to try and drag that over. Again, I'm on my other screen with the other folder so you can't see it. But if I try and just drag sublevel 1 like this, it's not even rendering that I'm trying to drag and drop something. So I'll show it to you more visually. If I try to drag it like that, it won't do it. It doesn't recognize it, that you're trying to move something from one folder to the other. So again, moving files around a lot of times much easier doing it on the local folders as opposed to trying to do that directly in Google Drive. Jeannie says, I wish I could name the attachment as I save to Drive, like save as versus just save. Yeah, unfortunately, I guess because when it's in your email as an attachment, it's in like a temporary location. I don't know, maybe they don't want you messing with it in that location. They want you to kind of commit to it, bring it local, then rename it. But like I said, I found that the workflow that I described, putting it in MyDrive first, and then renaming it, and then moving it, it doesn't take a whole lot of extra time for me. It's pretty quick, and I can do it that way. And I kind of like dumping stuff in MyDrive first as a repository. Sometimes I'll work with it there for a while, and then when I'm sort of done with it initially, then I'll move it like at the end of the day or whatever. So anyway. Hopefully that all helps. I hope you all feel like it was worthwhile hanging out with me for the last hour and 10 minutes or so. But that's all I got. If you have questions, just follow up. You all know where to find me. I'm not hard to find on Facebook. If you're not already in our group, join our group, Between Wall and Main Strategy Forum. This definitely goes under the heading of strategies for running your business more efficiently. So let's talk about it. Let's keep the conversation going. Join the group, join my 97 and up program, and then we can talk about it even more. Right, Greg?
Thank you, Seth.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you all for joining. I will see you all next week. I don't even know what we're doing next week. I have to check. I forgot what I scheduled. So I'll check and I'll post it online like usual.
Thank you.
All right. You got it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.